No, you're not seeing double. We have two of the same knife on the table for review yet again. But are they really the same knife? This is going to be fun. This is going to be a review on the Schrade Uncle Henry LB7 Bear Paw Lockback, which was, both at the time of release and still today, an alternative to the Buck 110. So here you can see this is a modern American-made, or sorry, an older American-made LB7. And here is a modern Chinese-made LB7 from American outdoor brand Schrade. Okay, this is going to be very interesting because I'm basically covering two of the four generations of Schrade here. This is obviously from the Imperial era. There was also the Walden era from before, and then in between the Imperial era and the American outdoor brands, there was the Taylor brands, which I don't have here to show, but I do have the version that most people are going to be familiar with, as well as the version that you can buy today. So I think that's a pretty good sample. Before talking about the knives, let's talk about the sheaths. Because at first glance, the sheaths look pretty much identical, but there are differences. Okay, so looking at the front, you can see this one simply says Schrade. Excuse me. And that's because this was offered in the Uncle Henry name brand, no Uncle Henry branding, and there's very near identical versions of this knife from Old Timer, so they just used a more generic sheath so they could use it across the whole line. The modern ones are actually advertising as Uncle Henry specifically. Overall design is very similar, though the stitching is more robust on the old American sheath. Belt loop is similar, slightly bigger on the older American one. And you can see I have labeled the inside just so I know what goes to what. Obviously, the older one is more supple and broken in, but that's largely just due to a lot of use. This is still closer to new, so this is still more rigid. I have carried it, but obviously it's not been carried nearly as much as this older model from the 1990s. Okay, this is a 2026 model. How the knives carry in the sheaths is a loose fit on the American. Okay, just is. On the Chinese, also a loose fit. So neither one of them fit very tightly. And again, that's because they're using these exact same sheaths for a wide variety of knives. So you're not going to get a super perfect fit like you would with, say, a Buck 110 sheath. That said, these knives would fit into a Buck 110 sheath, so if you wanted to replace it with an aftermarket option, you could. They are both genuine leather, okay? Cow leather for the older one, and they just say bovine leather on the current one. So assume a cow. I guess it could be from some other bovine, but ultimately unimportant. Relatively robust. The point is these sheaths are both very serviceable. They both work. Quality-wise, I would say the older one is slightly ahead of the Chinese one, but it's not a huge difference. Let's talk about what people actually care about, and that is the knives themselves. And I have a lot to say, and some of what I have to say may not be super popular. Okay? Before I get too far into this, I did not pay for this LB7. It was not provided for me for review either. I was actually curious to test Schrade's warranty service, and so I have this older American one. It's been put through the ringer. I've cleaned it up as best I could, but you know, there's no fixing this. I don't know if you can see. There is a fairly substantial amount of movement up and down. You can see that? So I was curious to see what Schrade would do about this, because this isn't even, you know, their knife anymore. It's the same brand, it's Schrade, but this is from, you know, 2 owners ago. Would American Outdoor Brands honor the warranty? So I contacted them. They asked for a video showing the issue, which I was able to provide for them, and they offered to send this modern Chinese version as a warranty substitute because they couldn't work on this American one. So I think that's pretty damn solid. You know, you bought a knife back in the 90s and you've used the living hell out of it, and now it's developed some play and it's no longer safe, or maybe it breaks. Schrade will take care of you. They'll send you the modern interpretation. The question then becomes, is the modern interpretation any good, considering the huge difference in the country of manufacturing? Again, this was USA, this is China. Well, I have used both of these knives quite extensively, and what I have to say is, in some ways the old American version is better, but there are in some ways that the Chinese version is the superior knife. Let's talk about this. They obviously share largely the same blade shape. It is a clip point blade that is 3.75 inches long. On the old American Schrade, a lot of people mistakenly call these 440C blades. Okay, they are not. Having spoken with a lot of Schrade employees on blade forums, I can confirm that the Schrade Plus knives, whether they were Uncle Henry, Old Timer, or just sold under Schrade itself, all knives that say Schrade Plus are 440A stainless steel. Okay? Now, Schrade's heat treat of 440A was pretty damn good. I'm not going to lie to you. It was pretty damn good. So it's understandable why a lot of folks would think that it would be 440C. It outcompetes a lot of cheaper Chinese knives 440C that we have today. But no, it is a 440A blade. The Chinese Schrade is using a 7CR17 MOV, which is the Chinese equivalent of 440A. So in terms of tech specs, the blade steel is basically the same. But what about edge retention? Well, this came super duper razor sharp, and I had sharpened this up to be super duper razor sharp, and I put them through their 75 cuts through medium thickness cardboard test that I like to do with all of my lower to mid end blade steels. Okay, here's how the American Schrade held up. Snags a little bit, but it's pretty good. It still has an edge. Like you see, it's not perfect. For 440A, that's pretty damn impressive. How about this Chinese one in 7CR17 MOV? Little snag. Okay, as good, if not better. And that actually really, really impressed me. Because like I said, these American Schrades were known for having a pretty good heat treat of their 440A. But these Chinese versions seem to have a really, really good heat treat of their 7CR17 MOV. So I would call the blade steel pretty much a tie. Okay? They're both hollow ground. Like I said, they're very similar. Differences in how they're clipped, but that doesn't make too much difference in how they perform. Okay, there's your thickness comparison. Yes, I put thumb studs on both of these for easier one-hand deployment. They don't come with that. The tip on the American was more robust, nice and pointy and robust, but the Chinese version is even pointier, but as a result, it will be more fragile, so be careful with that. But I would say the blades are pretty comparable. The biggest differences are going to come down into the handle, okay, because the American Schrade is a robust, thick-handled knife that is super comfortable in the hand. Okay, we have a 4.87-inch long handle that is a solid brass frame with 2 pieces of rosewood riveted into the handle. Okay, pretty well rounded. It is comfortable as all hell. On the Chinese, we have brass liners with brass bolsters and 2 pieces of unknown wood. I assume it could be Palo Ferro or Palo Santo, some budget alternative to rosewood that is also riveted or pinned into the handle. Okay, and it is also very comfortable. It is not as comfortable as the American-made version. Okay, it's just a difference in the thickness. The thicker knife is going to be more hand-filling, therefore it's going to be more ergonomic. This thing feels really, really good in the hand. This feels pretty good in the hand. I would give ergonomics to the American. Talking about the deployment, this is obviously well worn in. Even if we use the nail nick, comes out nice and smooth. Okay, same thing with the Chinese one. It's been carried and used. Comes out smooth. We have a more positive backspring action on the Chinese model. Hear that? On the American, still pretty positive, just not as positive. But keep in mind, this is a much older backspring. This is relatively new by comparison. So how they're going to wear in is a matter of, something we'll see over time. In terms of lockup, this older one has a tiny bit of side-to-side movement, and it has that up and down movement I mentioned. The Chinese version came rock solid, but after quite a bit of use with it, and I have carried and used the hell out of this knife, up and down, it's got some movement in it now. Side to side, it's tight as a frickin' bank vault. So I would call that pretty damn solid considering the price point. This is about a $25 to $30 knife, okay? These older American ones, if you buy them online, you're looking anywhere between $50 to $100 depending on condition. Brand new condition with the box, $150. I'm pretty happy with this, all things considered, okay? I have a Buck 110 that's from the 90s that is in much worse shape than either of these two Schrades. just to be completely fair. So I'm actually happy with the lockup on this. Deployment, like I said, good and smooth. We have a very positive back spring. Snaps the knife shut. Centering, you know, not that people care on traditional knives, but it's not perfect. Not on either of these, okay? It's not really a concern with knives like this. What is a concern with knives like this, and all knives, is the weight. And now I wrote the weights down. I didn't bring out my little scale. Look, we're looking at 7.9 ounces on the American version, 6.5 on the Chinese version. 10.1 in sheath, 8.5 in sheath. So the Chinese version is lighter, obviously due to that difference in handle thickness. Okay, so quite a bit lighter there. That could be a plus, it could be a con. It just depends on your preferences. I would imagine that there are people who will like the fact that it is lighter weight and may consider it a trade-off for that thinner handle, which again, it's still very comfortable in the hand. Heavier, but more ergonomic. Should you buy a Schrade LB7? I think yes, if you like traditional style lockback knives. These were meant to be budget alternatives to the Buck 110. Even back in the day, this was meant to be a budget Buck 110 alternative. And to this very day, the Chinese model remains a very consistent, pretty solid budget alternative. Being completely real with you, will this 7CR17 MOV hold an edge as well as a 420HC Buck 110? No. The Paul Bose heat treat that you'll get on a 110 is still superior, just being honest. But a Buck 110 these days will set you back about $80 to $100 for a 420HC version. This will set you back about 25 to 30 bucks. Could be as low as 20 if you catch it on sale. So it's quite a bit more affordable, and it's a hell of a lot of knife. So the question becomes, should you buy it? Yeah, absolutely, all day long. It's a fantastic budget knife. I was really impressed by how well the 7CR17 MOV performed, and I thought it was really fun to compare it against this American-made, you know, more classic version. Definitely a big fan, definitely recommend it, and you'll see some more reviews on some more Schrades in the future, including a set of old-timers which are eerily similar to these because they were meant to be the working man's alternative back in the day and even now. So you'll see that video at some point in the future. Overall, if you like traditional knives and you want to beat the hell out of something, get an Uncle Henry LB7. You won't be disappointed.